Welcome, welcome, welcome to our very first formal lecture for Nuke. The goal of this lecture is to be able to get you into Nuke, understand some of the tools, get you set up, and get you, creating something that's kind of neat along the way. The first thing we need to do is make a folder. So I have a D drive folder here, D drive. You can make a folder wherever you want on your home computers or your external drives. At the school, you'll be using the P drive. Okay, so that's why I said D drive, so P drive. You should make a folder inside there that says your last name underscore W16. Make a folder inside there that says 2560. And make two folders in there. One says source and one says work. Okay. Now for this one, I'm going to be giving you files. So in this StillComposite folder, I have two folders. One's output and one is source folder. And I'm going to be giving you these specific files here. And what we're going to do in our example here is we're going to take this image and we're going to add in this lady walking here. We're going to change the sky out and we're going to add in this individual there. All right. So we're going to add it all to that image. So it's a good practice to understand how that whole process works. I also have, and I can give you this file too. It's not a big deal. But this is a soccer ball that I found. And what I want to do is also add in a CG element into the mix as well. Okay. So we're going to get started. If you have Nuke at home, you can use Nuke that you have there. Or if you have it at the school, obviously you can use that one. We're using the Nuke X version. 9.0 V4 is the one I have here. But typically this would work with anything. I just opened two versions of Nuke. There we go. Okay. So this is the Nuke interface. All the tools are going to be over here. So if you remember like Photoshop or After Effects, how you had menu bars and they had like filters and stuff, that's where you're going to find a lot of this stuff, is all these filters. All right. So you can go through these and check them out at your leisure. Over here is your typical file menu. You'll see there's not a whole lot of stuff here. Most of the magic happens on the sidebar here, or inside this area, or inside this area here. Okay, so this is the node graph. Okay, and this is where a lot of this stuff's going to happen. This is a node. I can pick it up and move it around and drop it here, or pick it up and drop it there, or I can do that, and it does nothing, but I can do it still. This is our viewer, so anything we're doing in the node graph would show up here. Okay, and that's typically like you've seen in After Effects, or you've seen in Premiere, or other programs like that. This is a bunch of menus that eventually we'll get to what some of these things mean as we go. Over here on the right is Properties, and this is where we would be editing our settings. So if we were to drop in like a laser beam, the laser beam node would drop in down here. We'd be able to see the laser beam there, and we'd be able to edit the laser beam properties over here. Okay. Now the controls for this, I'm just moving this around, but this node graph area can get pretty intense. So if I hold down Alt and I right click, you can see how I can move that whole graph around. It's only one node. I'm not moving the node, I'm moving the graph to see other areas of it. I can Alt middle mouse, and that will let me zoom in and zoom out. So I'm holding Alt, holding middle mouse, and I'm zooming in and out. And then left mouse does the same thing that right mouse does, so there's no difference there. Okay, and that's the same thing up here. Alt left, Alt middle, and then Alt right. All right. Now, Nuke is context or mouse sensitive, so if my mouse is here and I hit a button, it's going to do different things than if my mouse is here and I hit a button. Okay, so as an example, if I'm down here and I hit Tab, it pops open this window that allows me to type in and find different menu items that I'm looking for. But if I'm up here and I hit Tab, you'll see that it takes me to actually like a 3D area, and this is more along the lines of like what you would see inside of Maya. I hit Tab again, and that goes away. Okay. Now if you look here, this is where it's changing it: 2D, 3D, 2D, 3D. All right. So if you ever do that on accident, you can just look up here and change it to different views by toggling that Tab button. All right. So let's get into this. So we need to, just like Maya, we need to set our project. So again, if I hit the S key up here, this will bring up my viewer's settings. if I'm down here and I hit S, it'll bring up my project settings. Okay, so I'm down here and hit S, and that's where I want to do this. So we're going to call this StillComposite. And I like to include my name somewhere in the list because obviously if I get lost, I can find it really easy. For our project directory, I want to go and pick my folder. Desktop. Now this is a one-click, so if I single-click, it automatically opens it. So don't double-click these things because it'll just confuse you. All right. So I'm going to set my project to 2560. Okay. Now that may seem kind of odd that I'm setting it to 2560, but what that allows me to do is keep everything kind of synced together. All right. So project directory is set to my 2560 folder. My name is right here. My full-size format, this is what I want to render it out at. Okay, so I'm going to find inside here, I want to render this at 1280 by 720, which is right here, HD 720. All right, and then everything else should be good inside here. 24 frames a second is fine. HD 720. All right, that's really cool. All right, so now I'm just going to let me double check down here, make sure there's nothing else I want to change. Nope, everything else should be good. All right, so I'm just going to Control S to save this. And what it does is when I save my comp, you'll see that it automatically saves it into this folder here. So I'm just going to put it inside of that StillComposite folder and then give this a name. So I just went to Save As. I'll put it source folder. Yeah, perfect. StillComp_01 and then save. Okay. So now I have my stuff set up. I can close these properties by clicking the little X, boom, and now they're all gone. All right, so now we need to get this stuff in here. Source folder. So if we were in After Effects, we would go in here and we would find import. We would just go to File and we would say import, but there is no import in here. There's insert, which is not the same thing, but there's no import. Okay. Now you can drag stuff, so I can just drag this into here, and now it's actually inside the scene. But there's another way that typically is done, and that way is just by hovering your mouse in this area and hitting R. Okay, and R just means read. I'm going to hit cancel just so we can see this. If I go up here to this arrow, here's R for read, and here's W for write. All right. If you heard that, that was my dog shaking. Here is R for read. And then we just go through and we find our source folder, and then we find the specific images we want to grab, and then we hit open. Okay, so now we have each one of these. Now one of the tricks of this is going to be kind of organization inside of this scene. So I'm just going to kind of position these in a way that makes sense for me. Okay, so I'm putting the city here, then I'm putting the sunset, then I'm putting the old lady walking, then I'm putting the kid. Okay. So I'm just going to move this over a little bit, maybe zoom out a little bit. Typically, I pull my node graph off and I'll have it on my other screen, but I'm not fortunate enough to be able to do that today because I'm recording a lecture. All right, so now we brought these things in. You'll see that we don't see any of these things. They're all just kind of like floating in space. Now the viewer here has this little arrow, and this is what we're actually seeing. Okay, so I can grab this arrow tail, and I can connect it to the street, and then I can see the street. I can drag it to the sky, and I can see the sky. I can drag it to this, and I can see that. I can drag it to this, and I can see that. Okay? Or I can drag it off of it, and now it's disconnected. I could also click on one of these pieces, and this is a 1, so I could hit 1 so that it connects this to that viewer. I can click on this one and hit 2, and now it connects number 2 to that. I can click this one and hit 2, and it'll take it off of this one and put it on that one. Okay, now I can assign 1 to each one of these. Now the purpose of this is that if I'm not selected on anything, I could easily just go 1, 2, 3, 4, and just see all 4 images at my leisure. Okay, now for this instance, it doesn't really help us out at all, but you'll see in the future how this really can help us isolate certain areas and really work on certain things to get it to look the way we want it to look. All right, so you'll see that I'm clicked on this, it's connected to 1, and I'm not seeing anything, sometimes you just have to click on that 1 again to reestablish it, because before I was on 4, but then I disconnected 4, and so now it doesn't know what to do. So I have to just say, hey, let's look through 1. Okay. So what we want to do is we want to add stuff to this. All right. Now the first thing in this is this image. If we look at the top of this, it says 2048 by 1536. So that's a big image, obviously, and it's a lot bigger than what my resolution was that I set over there. So what I want to do is I want to add in a crop node. Okay. So I click on here, I hit the tab key, and I type in the word crop, and I can hit enter and it'll add a crop node. Now, just so you can see other ways to do that, I can also, make sure I'm clicked on this, go over here, and then I can add a crop node via this menu. So if you're not sure of where something is, obviously you can just go through and just kind of search for it, but the easiest way is just to hit the tab key and type in the first couple letters, and then you'll get a elimination process of what it is you actually want. Okay? So there's my crop node. Now it's an important thing to say too that the reason that this connected to this one and not any of the other ones is because I had it connected, or I had it clicked. I clicked this, created the crop node, and that's what did the magic. Now let's pretend I didn't have anything selected and I added a crop node. Okay, the crop node just kind of pops in just randomly in here. In order for me to apply it to this, just like the viewer, I have to connect the arrow to that. Okay? Now you'll see that the viewer arrow is still pointing to this, so I'm seeing just that. But if I drag this arrow to the crop node, now I'm seeing it actually cropped out. Okay? So again, something that you'll have to get used to, but it is pretty neat how it's going to work. Now each thing has its own kind of like settings and how they work in this. So if we look at this, you'll see that this crop node, what it's doing is it's actually cropping this image. So as I move this around, it's just grabbing a certain area of this image and just isolating that. What I really want to do is I want to make this as big as I can, so something like maybe this, like that. Okay, let's say something like this, but I want to maintain that 1280 by 720 format. Okay, so this is where it's going to get a little bit tricky because of how we are going to do things. So if I go into here and I go back to my crop node, just so I can get back to the default crop node, it comes in at the default size of this image, 2048 by 1536. So if I type in 1280 by 720, you'll see that it fits right there. Okay. Now you'll also see that there's a big box around this. So what it's doing is cropping it, sure, but it's not like reformatting it. It's not like shrinking it down. So if I just say reformat, you'll see that now it's actually locked this to the final size of my footage. Now the reason for doing something like that is maybe you want to keep like this old lady here. I may want to crop her, but still keep the size of this image in play for other reasons. Okay. So I still am not seeing everything in my scene. I want to see more of it. There's a lot more stuff that's out here that I still want to see. I just wanted to resize this to be a 1280 by 720. So what I'm going to do is pull this crop down. I'm going to click back on the street, and I'm going to hit the tab key and add a transform key. So here's transform. Again, I can go up here, go to transform, and there it is. So now what I can do is use this transform to move around this background image. Okay, so basically imagine a box that we're seeing through that's only 1280 by 720 pixels, and now I'm able to move this image inside that box to isolate what I want. I can also go over here to my scale and I can pull the scale slider down and then move this around to fit the image that I want. Okay, so I'm basically just framing this how I want that end result to look. Okay, now it's going to be a little bit tricky at first, but you'll get it because it's, it's not rocket scientists. Doot and doot. Okay, so I have my read here. I have my transform, which just resizes, excuse me, the stuff, and then I have my crop node, which actually shrinks it to that size. Okay, so that's where my footage is going to be. Now there's also the crop marks are still on here. My transform marker is still here. I don't want those there, so I can just hit these close buttons, and all that goes away. All right. So now, as far as Nuke is concerned, I have a 1280 by 720 image right here. So now what I want to do is I want to, let's change the sky out. Okay. So I'm going to go here, and I'm going to view the sky. And there it is, beautiful. Now, how do I get this and this together, right? If this was After Effects or Photoshop, I could just simply drop this behind it or on top of it, and using masks or layers or whatever, I could cut out this sky and replace it with this one, all right? So we can't just do that kind of stuff inside of Nuke. We have to do it a different way because we don't have like layers in that formal sense. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down here, and I'm going to go over here where we have this little eyedropper. It says here, and I'm going to do a keyer. Yeah, there we go. So I'm just going to do a keyer, and the default for this is a luminance key. All right. So now there's another cool thing that we can do is that we can actually look at other channels that are inside here. I think I want to pull my node graph over here. Yeah, that'll work for now. Okay. So and then I can pull this down, make that bigger. All right. So under this luminance keyer, and this works for everything. If I wanted to see the red channel, I could come over here and hit R, and now I'm looking at the reds of the image. If I hit G, it's going to be greens, B is going to be blue, and then I can just tap any one of those again. Okay, so I was on B, so I just tap B again, and it takes me back to the colored version. Now with this keyer, what it's going to do is I want it to create an alpha channel. I want it to create transparency back here. So if I hit A, right now what it's doing is showing me the alpha channel. And the alpha channel means wherever it's white, it's visible, and wherever it's black, it's invisible. Okay? So right back here, it's visible. I'm going to swap to my properties, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull. This is really odd looking, I'm sure, but if I pull this up like this, you can see how I'm blacking out all that other stuff. So I essentially want to just keep the sky super white, and I want to keep everything else super black. Okay, so as I pull this all the way over there, right about there. It's really tight in there, I can see that. But you can see that the sky now is super white. Okay, so what this means is that the sky is going to be visible, and the background here is going to be invisible, which will obviously adjust. Alright, so I'm going to hit A again, and you'll see that our footage hasn't changed, just this hidden channel, this hidden alpha that's inside of it. Okay, so now I need to merge these two things together. Okay, so I'm going to take this, and I'm going to hit M for merge. I think I want to split this. I'm going to right click and do split vertical and just drop my node graph down there. There we go. So now I can still see my node graph and still see the other stuff. Didn't like how it changed that. Okay, be flexible with your working. So here's my merge, and we get an A node right here, and we get a B node. If you zoomed in, you'd see this is a B right there. So A, I always think of it as what's on top, and B, whatever's on the bottom. So it's actually switched. So it's no big deal because I can pull this off and drag the B here. And I can drag my A over there because I want this to be on top and this to be on the bottom. So now to see the result of this merger, I click this and hit 1, and you'll see that we get some really weird result. Okay, so what's happening here is that we have an alpha channel, sure, but what's happened is we've never applied the alpha channel. We never said, hey, now that you have an alpha channel, I need you to cut it out and make it transparent. Okay, so I'm going to click on this, hit the tab key, and type in PreMute. And what that does is it just applies the alpha channel. So I go back to this image, you can see that now I only have this white sky here. Okay, so there's the white sky, nice. And then here is the new sky that I want to replace in that white sky area. Okay, but when I do, I also get this. Now the other reason I'm getting this is because of my formats. When Nuke, you're going to work with a lot of different formats, and this one is 3900 pixels by 1728 pixels. Now we just saw how we can crop and resize an image. That's what we're going to do to this. Okay, so I'm just going to grab these two, and I'm just going to copy them. I'm going to click on this, and I'm going to Control V paste, and look at how they drop right into this mix. And then look at too how this comes in, and it looks like it's a pretty decent size. Okay, if I go back to this one, it's huge. There's my transform kind of shrinking it, and then there's my crop isolating just that area. Now at any point I can double click the crop or double click the transform, and I can move around this image to grab a different part of that sky. Okay, I actually liked where it was at, so I'm just going to kind of leave it there. So I'm going to go back to my merge. Okay, now we still have the same issue of this sky is visible from the old one, but I want the sky to be invisible, and I want to see this sky in that spot and vice versa. So if I just jump back to my keyer here, you'll see there's an invert. Okay, so all I have to do is say invert. Oops, click it once. And you'll see that our old sky has now been replaced with our new sky. So here, if I go back, this is the neat thing. Here it is before we've done that, where the sky is now gone. Here it is with that new sky. Here it is with the key, everything's super bright. Here it is with the pre-multiply. There it is with the merge. And this is just me just clicking on each one of these nodes and hitting 1 to see what it looks like at that point. So this is what's neat, is that I can click on the first one, hit 1, there's my original. There it is transformed. There it is cropped. There is the key, which you can't see anything happening. There's the cutout, and now here's the new sky inside of it. Okay. Now we do have a bit of an issue here with this being super duper white, but at any point I can come back, grab my luminance key, and just start to tweak some of these settings here. So you can see as I pull this, maybe I'll pull that a little bit too. And there's also, it's hard to see here, there's a C and a D. This is A and B, C and D. Okay, I can adjust these as well. I don't think C and D are really going to do anything for me in this case. Alright, I think I'm actually going to use a different item inside here. And this is what's great about Nuke, is that all I have to do is just kind of move these up. Make sure I'm not disconnecting anything. And then between the keyer and the pre-mult, what I'm going to do is I'm going to click here. I'm going to go over to my channels. One of these, one of these, one of these. I can't remember where that specific one is. I know what it's called. I'm just going to hit tab, and it's called erode. Okay, so I'm going to do an erode filter, and you'll see that that erode filter cleans that up. Okay, and I can adjust that erode ever so slightly. So maybe not even at all. 0.1 is probably good. Yeah, Gaussian's no good. Try quadratic. Yeah, I think box actually with the default of 1 was probably our best bet. There we go. Okay. So now we've replaced the sky. Now it's not perfect. There will be more time involved in cleaning this up, but I don't want it to be worried about being perfect at this stage. Okay? Close all these things. So let's just take a step back and discuss what we've done. I just tapped the spacebar. I can make that bigger so you can see it. So we have our city street. We cropped it first just to get it cropped, and then we transformed it to get it in the right scale and position that we wanted to frame that image. We added a luminance keyer to cut out the background and set it to invert. We added a filter to kind of clean up some of the edges, and then we pre-multiplied it to get that end result. Okay, now the order of this is important. If I did my crop first, then I did my transform, as in this order, I would get completely different results, as you can see. Okay, so I need to make sure that the order of this, that the arrows are connecting, is the order that it should be happening in, and that's something that you'll gain more knowledge on as you start to tinker around. Okay, and then we took our sky, we transformed it, we cropped it, and then we merged it on top of that one, and what that gives us is this image. Okay, now here's where that 1, 2, 3, 4 type thing with the viewer comes in handy, because I can go to my crop here and hit 2, and then if I click on my viewer, I can just go 1, 2, 1, 2, and I can see the difference in the two views. I can see what that sky is doing, how it's adding to the scene. Okay, and we'll come back at the end of this and we can actually adjust some of our coloring to get the sky to maybe fit a little bit more of this scene. And also remember, we can also go to that transform for the sky, and I could actually move this around and grab a different portion of the sky to show something maybe different happening way in the background. Okay, and if this was an animated feature, we could actually animate this thing moving across the screen. Okay, maybe we'll go with something in that region. All right, that's good enough for now. All right, so there we go. We have our merge happening right here. So now what I want to do is take this lady here, and I want to add her into the scene as well. So now with her, I need to cut her out and drop her into the other scene. So the easiest way to do that, if we were in Photoshop or After Effects, would be with Roto, and that's the same thing happening here. So I'm going to click on her, hit the tab key, and I'm going to add a Roto inside here. Okay, Roto is just like the pen tool. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure this is set to alpha, which it is, and I'm just going to go through and just draw the shape of her out. Okay, and it works very similar to Photoshop and Illustrator and After Effects. Just clicking and dragging to pull handlebars out. And I like to get like right on that edge one. Okay, if I need to break a handlebar, I hold on Alt. Oops, sorry, Control. And I can drag around her. Yep. If you make a mistake, you just hit undo. As you get more comfortable with using the keys of this program, all the other programs that you were using obviously become more difficult because you're using hotkeys from every other program. Okay, now there's a hole right here which we'll fill in too. I'm just going to go around the item. Now there is a bit of color looking that I did on this individual. It wasn't perfect color matching to what my new scene is, but it wasn't completely off. Or it wasn't completely off. Okay, I can't grab someone who's in the middle of a desert with the sun blaring on them and then put them in a scene as easily as someone who's like maybe, you know, at night. Okay, obviously this takes some time, and if you're not good at making paths, well, guess what? Get good at making paths. We're making several of them. Rotoscoping and, there we go. I keep holding Control. Why I keep doing that. Rotoscoping and tracking are two of the biggest jobs, especially entry-level jobs, that you would get doing this kind of thing. And if you can master rotoscoping, you can master tracking, then you can make a whole lot of moolah. Pay attention to her shadow while we're here. Okay, if we make a mistake too, we can always come back and add more points later. Now the Bezier is a node, okay, so what that means is that it's not just like a path, it's actually its own thing. And the neat thing is, once we have a path, once we have this stuff set up, we can actually add it into our scene anywhere we need it. So if I needed to cut this lady out, and then I needed to maybe change the color of her outfit or do whatever, I can reuse that path over and over and over again. If I needed her to glow for some reason, or I don't know what. And see how I'm just going around adjusting where this path is. Now, our biggest thing is consistency. So we want to stay consistent as we draw the path around. I don't want to go into the red area too much here, and then the pink area a little bit there, and then whatever. I want to really just take time to just lay it out. Now, we could also go into Photoshop, and if you're like more comfortable drawing stuff in Photoshop, you can actually draw all your paths inside of Photoshop, all your masks, and just do some prep work on your footage that way too. The alpha channel we created on the sky, or on the city for the sky, we could actually create alpha channels inside Photoshop and then bring those alpha channels back into Nuke. Okay, now there is some interpretation here. Is this the sky? Is this her face? That's her hair. So I'm going to go back a little bit so I can grab her hair. Now this project is something that for us is just a quick get to know Nuke kind of thing, but this is something that you actually would be doing in a assignment for work. It would just be a lot longer. Okay, so now this area here that I want to cut that out. All right, so I'm just going to hit A just so we can kind of preview this and see that what we just did was we drew a mask. So we drew this white mask around this lady. So I want to cut this out, so what I should be doing is drawing a black mask inside here. So I'm going to go and click off of this Bezier. I'm going to come over here to this tool and make sure I'm clicked on Bezier again. And then I'm just going to draw a new shape right here. Okay, so there's that shape. Now if I hit A, you'll see that both shapes are equally white. If I come over here, there's a color. So see this color right there? I click on that color, and then I can tell my alpha to be black. Okay, so now it's just subtracting that color from there. Easy peasy, cup of cheesy. So let's close our properties, hit A again to get this. And so now, in order for this alpha channel to actually cut her out of her background, I need to apply a PreMute to it. So I hit Tab, hit PreMute, and now you'll see she's cut out of her background. Okay? Now, I don't need all this other stuff here, so I can also crop her. So I'd say crop, and then I can pull this in here, pull this in here, pull that in there, there. There we go. And now she is cropped. And I want to say reformat. There we go. So now she fits perfectly inside this little cage right there. So now the same way we merge the sky into this, I'm going to merge her into that scene. So I click on her and hit M for merge. Now for this one, she is going to be on top of the background, thinking about an actual layering system. So she will be the A of this one, and the B will be that one. All right? So if you look, there she is. How adorable is she? I wonder if she's single. Okay, so here she is. I'm going to close my properties because I don't want to accidentally do something. And she looks like she's pretty well cut out. But what we need to do is position her. Okay, and we know that we can position stuff by using a transform node. So if I go down after my crop, and I hit the tab key and I go to transform, now I have a transform node and I can move. I'm going to call her Helen. I'm going to move Helen all the way to the back. Now, good thing to kind of look for size. Like, here's how big Helen is at these different areas. So here, she actually looks like she's about the right size, but I want to actually put her maybe a little further back. So I'm going to shrink her down. So I'm going to go to the scale. A little bit taller, Helen. Older people are typically shorter anyway, so maybe that would work. Maybe she's really tiny. Oh, look at that. That looks perfect. It looks like she's actually way, way, way back there. Okay. So that looks pretty decent. Even her coloring matches the scene pretty well. She's a little bit too red. If you look at the red here and you look at her red coat, obviously they could be two different reds, but she just pops a little bit too much for me. So we'll adjust all that stuff after too. Okay. Let me close that. All right, so that looks pretty good. If you look at our before, let's go back to the crop here, and there's our 1. Here's our 2. Here's our 3. And we can look at this and see, okay, there's the original image. We added a different sky. I added Helen. Wonderful. I don't like to have all these things sticking out there. All right. So there's Helen. Now we have this boy here. And the boy is going to be done the exact same way. So I'm not going to bore you with the retelling of this story, but I'm going to do this exact thing. I'm going to roto him out. I'm going to pre-multiply him. I'm going to crop him. And then I'm going to transform him and merge him into this one. So I would add another merge node into that. Now before we get into doing that specific one, you'll see here that I have this. And this is basically my city. And that goes into an A here. And then this is my B, and then that comes into the top. But over here, the B comes to the top, and the A comes in off the right. So this is actually a little bit messy for me. All right. So what I like to do is organize this a little bit nicer. So there we go. Something like this, and something like that. Okay. So essentially, what I have here, there we go, is I have my main thing. My main thing is this city. And then these are all elements that I'm adding to that city street. Okay, so I want to keep this in a nice straight chain going down. Some people go across. I move vertically. Okay, so this kid will actually be like over here inside this. All right, so let me take a break in the video and make this happen. All right, so now this dude is cut out. I'm gonna close all this stuff. I pre-multiplied him. I cropped him. So now I can just merge him into this mix. So I'm going to hit the merge key, and oops, I did not connect the A to the original one, but it's no big deal because you can just connect the A, and I can just connect the B. And if they're the wrong ones, if it doesn't show up right, then swap them. Click that and hit 1. See, everything's in a nice straight line here. Perfect. Spacebar again. And there's our big boy. All right, so let's take him and add a transform node. Oops. I did it again. Transform. There we go. And then now we can stick him, I don't know, maybe he's over here. Giant. Shrink him down. He's a little kid. You can see where that mask isn't like a huge issue being, you know, not perfect. There we go. Alright, I'm also going to change my filter here. It looks like you got a little bit too soft. So you see the cubic. I can go through and I think I like that Griffman one. He's going to be a little bit softer because he's in the background, or Lankzos is a good one. Yeah, Lankzos is a good one. Alright, but I want to control my own feathering. I don't want them to do it. Alright. There you go. So now again, he looks like he's in the scene. She looks like she's in the scene. Everything is perfect. Okay, not really, but it's good enough for now. Now they are missing shadows, so we eventually want to put shadows in there. And we also want to adjust their coloring, right? So let's go through and adjust some colors and play around with some of these features. So the coloring can happen anywhere, okay? So if I go here and I adjust my color, it's going to adjust the color, but it's going to happen on here, it's going to happen here, it's going to happen here, it's going to happen here. And that might affect some of the other stuff, like our luminance stuff. Let's say I made the scene really, really bright. Well, now our luminance key, which is using the brightness of the scene, is now going to be affected. So I typically want to adjust it right before I do any merging stuff on here. Okay, so I'm going to go to my pre-mult, and I'm just going to hit G for grade. Okay, so there's a grade. And what this is kind of like levels. Okay, so just so you can see what this is going to look like, I'm going to zoom back out. And if I adjust the black point, you can see how now everything's kind of like gray because I've taken my black point and really brought it into the gray area. If I pull it up, it's going to darken the blacks. Okay, bring this back to 0. Same thing with the white point. I bring it one way, and we're kind of getting in this gray area. I bring it the other way, and then just really brightens up our stuff. Now the lift and the gain are just going to lift the entire thing. So it's basically just like pulling all the colors up or pulling all the colors down. And the same thing here. Okay. And then multiply is actually just like multiplying. So it's like darkening your darks and brightening your brights kind of thing. Okay, and then take it the other way, and it's lessening the contrast. Offset, very similar to lift and gain. About that. And then gamma will adjust some colors as well. Now a lot of these, go back to 1. I like to just kind of play around with the colors and see what I'm liking. I typically like to adjust maybe a little bit of gain on here. If the scene's a little bit darker, I can brighten it up a smidge. And then I can add a little more contrast by pulling up my multiply. Okay, you can see how I added a bit more work to that. Now, in this case, let's say I wanted to see what this is going to look like without this grade on here. Instead of me going back to this and hitting 1, and then going to the grade and hitting 2, and then looking at it back and forth, okay, let me disconnect those. I want to see the end result, but I just want to see that end result without this grade on here. All right. So if I click on the grade, I can just hit D, and that disables it. So I can look at this and see what version I like better. Do I like it without the grade? You can see there's a big X in it. Or do I like it with the grade? And obviously with the grade adds a little bit more life into the scene, a little bit more color into the scene. So I'm going to keep the grade on here. Like I said, I just pulled up the gain a little bit and adjusted the multiply a smidge. Okay. So now we can go to our sky, because maybe our sky needs some adjusting. So before we do the merge, I'm just going to pull this up, I'm going to pull this up, I'm going to pull that up, and I'll add in a grade here. And then I can adjust the sky. So I want the sky maybe a little bit brighter. Maybe I don't want the brightness, I want it to be brighter, sure, but I maybe don't want it to be as blue. That's going to be something else, which I'll show in a second, if I can't get to it. Like that seems like that's working pretty good there. Maybe a little bit of lift in that direction. Okay, now again, click the grade, D. Okay, it actually looks like it's welded into that scene a little bit better, being that bright, and I like the way that's looking. Now just to show, if I want to take some of that blue out of there and make it a little bit more desaturated, I could hit the tab key and go to saturation. And that's another one that I could just pull the saturation down or pull the saturation up to adjust how saturated that area is. Okay, or I can just delete it because I like the blue that it is. All right, so now we'll go to our to Helen here. Now these nodes are getting pretty big in what this is. So I don't want to always have to like click and drag this one up and then click and drag this one, then click and drag this one, and then same thing to move these. If I hold Control, it allows me to click on a bottom node and I can drag that whole tree upward. Okay, so I can just click on the bottom one now and add my grade, pull everything together. Okay, all right, so here's something weird that's happening. Okay, so my grade on here is affecting everything. Right, so it's not just affecting the sky, it's actually, or the Helen, it's affecting my entire scene. So I'm going to go here to unpremultiply, and I'm going to say alpha. Okay, and so what that does basically, just for the sake of this grade, it means it's only going to affect Helen and nothing else. All right, so it's not affecting any of my other colors. All right, so let me reset my lift to 0, reset that to 1. There we go. So I'm just going to maybe put these further away. I'm just going to pull the lift up a little bit. Maybe add a little bit more multiply inside here. I think I lifted it maybe a little bit too much. There we go. All right, and then again, let's see. It's a subtle adjustment there. There we go. It's again, it's a subtle adjustment, but I think it really helps kind of weld her into that scene a little bit better. And again, we could go into this, add that saturation node, and maybe just pull back some of the saturation on her outfit without pulling back any of the brightness of it. Okay, pull that whole thing up. All right, Timmy. Nah, Timmy's too predictable. Colin. Sure, looks like a Colin. So let's adjust Colin's grade. Just click on that transform, hit G for grade. I want to just kind of desaturate. See, we're adjusting the color again, so we just come back to that unpre-multiply. And a little more life in his face. I think the face is really losing some of the coloration. There we go. So I'm adjusting the white point a little bit because I think I just needed to bring the whites in a little bit better. I think that's good. Again, if you look at this, disable it, and it definitely looks more welded in the scene with those adjustments on there. Okay, so my white I've changed to 1.42, multiply at 1.08, and the offset at 0.01, probably not affecting it terribly a whole lot, but it is. All right, now, as we continue working in Nuke, I want you to consider each one of these little nodes here, not necessarily the sky in this instance, but Helen and Colin. You can consider them assets, because once this is done and we have this final grade node here, we can really do whatever we want with it. So let's say I went into this and I grabbed all these and I, under edit, you can see there's copy and paste and all that stuff. So I'm just going to copy and paste. And then if I were to add, let's say, another merge right here, and then I went to this transform, there it is, and I pulled this one right here, and I made this one bigger. You can see how I can make it look like, obviously that's like enormous. Colin, you're not that big, I'm sorry, buddy. I can make it look like I have multiple ones of these. Now in this case, Colin looks exactly like his brother Jerry. Colin and Jerry. But you can see that there is definitely a neat way that we can do this, where if we had several iterations of a person, we could, and is done in movies, populate an entire city with all of these different instances of it. Okay. Now another thing to pay attention to is if we look at this, this is pretty much the same thing as this, but the only thing that's changed is this transform here. Okay. So look at how I can do this. If I take this node, this arrow from here, and I just drag it right to this grade, I now have two Colin and Jerry's right on top of each other. I'm going to hit T for transform, and I'm going to add a transform. Look at this. I drag it. It turns white. So now I have a transform like inside this one. And then I can move the other one out of there. That's the wrong one. I can move the other one out of there, and I can scale that one up. So you can see how now I have two of them sitting right here. Now, it's a pretty neat way that we can do this, and we can actually have multiple ones. If I just added a new transform and a new merge, I could have multiple twins and Siamese twins and triplets and whatever else. Just delete those things. And same thing with Helen. I can do the same stuff with Helen way in the back. Okay? So in movies, they will do this kind of thing where they grab these assets of people and they just duplicate those assets of people all over the place to get them to work correctly. All right. So now let's add in some shadows here, because Colin obviously will need a shadow on top of him or underneath him. So I'm going to go here to where Colin is standing and look at the shadows that are here. Like here's a shadow right there. There's some shadows there. It's not a whole lot of long shadows. So I wouldn't want to put like this big long shadow coming off of Colin or off of Helen. They're very diffused, soft shadows on the ground. So that's what I want to stick with. Okay. We could get more involved too, and maybe the area back here would be a little bit darker because Colin's standing there. but we're not going to get that detailed into it. So in order to create a little shadow right here, I need to create a solid, okay? So I'm going to make a solid just off in nowhere. Oops, sorry, I'm in After Effects. A constant. There we go, a constant. And this constant is just a nothing. It's just solid color, okay? Now in this solid color, I'm going to add a Roto. All right, so I'm going to do essentially the same thing I did with Colin here. I'm going to cut his shadow out. Now, what I want to do is I want to keep Colin and his shadow always together. So let me just scoot this stuff here, up and over a smidge. Because what I want to do is I want to add in a merge right between these, okay? So I'm going to have Colin standing here. I have rotoed him out. And then I've pre-multiplied him so he's by himself. And then I want to take his shadow and just put a shadow underneath him, okay? So I'm going to merge this into that. So I hit merge. I drop this into that mix. Okay. And then I'm just going to draw a shadow around Colin's feet. Okay, so there's a shadow around Colin's feet. If I double click my Roto here, I can feather this. Now we can't see anything happening, so let me hit A. Make sure I'm viewing my Roto. There it is. Maybe I'll adjust my fall off a bit. There we go. Maybe I'll adjust the opacity a bit. There we go. And so now what I'm doing is giving Colin a shadow, so that when we come to this merge, you'll see that Colin has this shadow underneath him, okay, which looks, right now, it just looks like a big blur. Here it looks black because we're on a black background. But once he's cropped, and you can see my crop is maybe a little bit too tight on the bottom, so I need to pull that down a little bit. There we go. And then he's transformed, and he's graded, and all that other stuff, and he's dropped into the scene. You'll see that Colin now has a shadow. Now, if I disable that, you can see that happening. You can see it's very subtle. You can see that shadow happening. So I can go back to my Roto, click on the Bezier, and maybe adjust how dark that is. Okay. If I don't want to see this outline, I hit O for overlay. I don't hit O for overlay. Blanking on the hotkey for it. It was Q. It used to be O, but then they changed it in this version. Okay, so now that's off. Now I can adjust what this shadow is looking like and really adjust what I want it to do. Now, if I come back here and I still see like this is still maybe a little bit too hard, I pulled this feathering up pretty high. You know, maybe I want to adjust it further. Actually, it looks pretty good there. Nuke's thinking. Good time to save. So I'll save. There we go. I'll just adjust. There we go. Cool. Too much. There we go. Okay. Now another thing I can do is on this Roto here, I've added one Roto that just kind of like drops it in. I could add another Roto. Let me go back to this merge. There it is. Let me hit Q so I can see my Roto shapes, and then I can just add a new Roto shape, kind of like around his shoe. What's wrong there? Let's try this again. Click off the Bezier 1. So I want to have essentially just more of a contact shadow where his shoe is hitting. Okay, so now if I go to the merge here, and we look at the result, you'll see that his feet are gone. Okay, now this is where the A and B come in, because the B is on the bottom. So I'm actually like overlaying the shadow on top of him, which shouldn't be happening. So if I click here and I hit Shift X, it'll swap which one happens first. Okay, so we still have those things happening, but now the shadow is underneath his feet. So obviously you can see there's a huge difference in what's happening with those two things. All right, so that's the correct way. Then we go back to the merge. And then we can see now he has these dark footprints, and then he has this shadow around it. And I can go back to Bezier 2 and 3 and maybe pull these settings down a bit just to adjust what his feet are looking like. Okay, so again, we can look at this and see what does this look like. We go to the merge, we disable it. Oops. In this case, I can't disable the merge because of how this is set up. I can disable the rotos though. So there's definitely a huge difference in making Colin look like he's standing there by giving him those shadows. Okay, now this whole setup here, I can do the same thing for Helen. All right, I do need a little bit more room, so I'm just going to hold Control and drag this up. Okay. And I know I'm going to do this after I do the PreMute, so I'll drag this up. So I'm going to add a constant. I'm going to add a roto. I'm going to merge this in here. I know that the B should be on the left side, so I hit Shift X, and that swaps them. And then I'm just going to view this and then just draw my shadows around Helen. This foot's raised, so I probably don't need a shadow around that. So I'll just go in here and go. So there's the one for her shoe. I just pull it out a little bit. There we go. And then I'll give her a little one right here. I'm going to feather this one probably a bit more. It doesn't have to be perfect because you're so far away we're not really seeing it. I'm kind of drawing it in a perspective to it though. Her cane is touching, so we'll give that one. There we go. And then we'll save again because Nuke likes to close down right when we're, not expecting it. All right. So we go here, we go here. There we go. So now we just drew our shadow around Helen. Now another way that we can adjust these properties, let me double click that roto, adjust the properties of this feathering is they have these little legs on them. So if I click and drag these legs, you can see how I can pull out these things. And these are all feather handles. Okay, so you can see how this is actually feathering this out. And I can still adjust the feathering up here more. I can still adjust my feather fall off more up here. But it just allows me just another level of control if I didn't want so much feather happening right there and I wanted more happening in other spots. All right. So that's cool there. We should probably label these. So I'm just going to double click on this and say this is the cane. This is her overall. Yeah, I spelled it right. This is her right foot. This is my left foot. There we go. All right, cool, cool, cool. Let's go back to where we can see the end result. Hit A so we see everything. Hit Q so we don't see the overlays. And then we can just go through and say, okay, the overall shadow needs to be knocked down quite a bit. There we go. Her right foot shadow can be pulled down and feathered a bit like that. And I think her crop is off too, so let's jump back up here. Where you at, Helen? There you are. Even though it's right here, I can still adjust it, and it all works. There we go. I did push her up a little bit, just because of where that crop ended up being. Just push this whole thing up like this. And sometimes it really is just a good thing just to maybe reset that specific item and lay it out. Let's turn this reformat off. I want to crop you, Helen. I'm actually going to delete that crop and just add a new crop in there because it shouldn't be moving our stuff around. Yeah, see? It's not moving our stuff around. And once you know the settings here, once you know what you're doing, it just becomes a lot easier. Alright, so now we're recropped. We're going to crop together. Now Helen did move away. Oh, Helen, what are you doing to me? Transform, right? Because that's how we moved her. I'll just move Helen back into position. There you go, sweetie. Stay on the right path, Helen. Alright. So now she has a shadow. Obviously, we need to adjust that feathering on that shadow some more. Okay, I can go to the root of this. Hit Q again so I don't see all that stuff. I can adjust the overall shadow of that. There we go. So I think that's working good there. Again, we could disable that Roto. And see, it definitely looks like she's planted better in the scene having those shadows in place. Alright, cool. Alright, so this is where we're going to stop this introduction to Nuke. Obviously, this seems like it's pretty in-depth stuff, but it's very, very basic stuff. It's just a matter of getting through understanding how this whole thing is set up. You'll see how playing a neatness role will definitely help keep your stuff organized and understand where your stuff is. I want to show one more thing of how we can stay organized a little bit better. I'm just going to hold Control and drag this up, and I also hold Shift to kind of constrain it. That's good there. I'm going to pull this off to the side. So this is kind of lined up with Helen, and then Colin will be lined up right there. Perfect. Okay. So if I grab all these things, I hit Tab, and I do a backdrop. I can backdrop it like it's hot. You can see that I get this backdrop node. Backdrop node. The backdrop node allows me to give this a name. So I can say Colin, the boy. And then I can also give this a name. I can say Colin. It's Colin with one N. I didn't want to do, or the one L. I didn't want to do the two L's. Just complicate his life. Same thing here. I can grab this and then, oops. Getting ahead of yourself, Sean. What are you doing? Close that tab. Close that pane. Yeah. Grab all this stuff, hit Tab, add a backdrop. This one is Helen, also with one L. Old lady. Okay. And then this is our sky. So we'll just Tab, backdrop, double click it. Go. And then this is our source footage. There we go. Okay. So I'll save again. Now, the cool thing about this is I would no longer have to hold Control and click on these points. I can just grab this tab and move Helen wherever I need to move Helen. So I need to get the Helen out of there. I can get the Helen out of there. Okay, really nice and organized. And anyone coming into this scene, I'm sorry, Colin, I do have to change your name. It looks like Colin. Maybe I don't know how to spell Colin. I should not name my kids Colin if I ever get a kid named Colin. That's like Colleen. No. All right. Sorry for the detour. If someone else comes into your scene, they will know exactly, okay, there's a source footage, there's a sky they use to replace, there's Helen, there's Colin, and then this is the chain that takes them to the end. Okay, so we're going to save this, and we're going to come back to this at another time and add that soccer ball inside here. That'll be a second project, but you'll see all that stuff. Okay, so there's where we're at. So save your work, make sure you know where your stuff is, and play with it.